Welcome back into the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. It is finally game week, and here to discuss it all, I'm Joey Van Zummeren, one of the football reporters for Missouri on SI, and I'm joined by my fellow football reporter, Michael Stamps. How are we finally doing, Michael? Football season is finally here.
Man, I've said the same thing every introduction the last couple weeks, and I can finally say it's here. We're 2 days out. I guess one day when you guys are going to be seeing this. So I think we're excited, even if it is just Murray State. I think it's going to be interesting to see what we get on the field from the first week. So definitely excited. It's going to be a fun atmosphere. Hopefully a fun crowd as well on a Thursday night.
I don't think it's really going to hit me that football in Columbia is back until I am walking to my gate, heading up the elevator to the press box, and then hearing the music through the audit or the concourse, and then I will know we are back. So again, even though it's just Murray State, and even though Eli Drinkwitz wants those last 300, 400 seats to sell out, I'm sure. I mean, one, it's probably going to be a more lively atmosphere than it was for week one last year. I'm definitely looking forward to this. So, in this episode, it's funny, we were talking beforehand. It's like we've exhausted a lot of the talking points during these past few weeks during fall camp. Still a little bit of stuff to discuss with Murray State, but really, as Eli Drinkwitz said so many times during his press conference this past Sunday, there's not a lot to know about Murray State. We don't know much about this team that is going to be playing the Mizzou Tigers on Thursday afternoon. A lot of transfers. He said, according to Eli Drinkwitz, there is a total of 60 new players on Murray State's roster around that realm, from incoming high school freshmen or incoming players from high school, and then also through the transfer portal. I can't fact check them on that because there's really not enough coverage of Murray State to see exactly how many transfers they have coming in. They have a lot of transfers. I do know that. Going to have a transfer starting at quarterback from South Dakota School of Mines. Quite a few other transfers at key positions. They had a tight end who transferred to Illinois this past season. He was one of their really strong playmakers last year. His name is escaping me at the moment, but tight end last year was top contributor for them. I believe all Missouri Valley Conference player, transferred to Illinois. So they're losing them, adding in a bunch of players, adding in head coach Jody Wright. This is going to be his very first time being a head coach. He's coming over after spending 2 years at South Carolina's tight end coach. As Drinkwitz mentioned, he has experience in the NFL from 2019 to 2021. Spent time with the Browns and the Giants as assistants on both offense and defense. Versatile skill set. I like it. A lot of his coaching staff comes from his connections that he made from working quite a bit at Jacksonville State. That's his alma mater. Worked at Jacksonville State for a little bit, and then also University of Alabama, Birmingham, for quite some time as well. So this guy has, diverse skill set, diverse resume. But again, going to be his first time as a head coach. Murray State is a good place to start with it. But again, there's not a lot to know about this roster at this point in time. And honestly, I'm sure Murray State, they don't know what their team is going to look like either. This is really going to be a tryout for them. And, they're expecting to be, the goal for them in this game is to compete. If they can make headlines by putting Missouri with their backs against the wall and, only lose to Mizzou by less than 10 points like Middle Tennessee State did last year, then they'll be happy. At least the athletic staff will be with the exposure they're getting from that. So, Michael, I know you did a little bit more research on this actual Murray State team coming to town. What do you have to tell us on your scouting report here?
Yeah, research might be a friendly term to use. You said about half of what we know. We can start with Jaden Johansson. He is the quarterback from the South Dakota School of Mines. In his last year of school here with the Racers. He started his career at North Dakota State, which I found interesting, but didn't get much run there at all. Just looking at his stats, stats from last year, 2,543 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 11 interceptions on a 65% completion percentage. Did a little bit on the ground as well, 375 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns. Did a little bit more on the ground earlier in his career with the Hard Rockers. Rushed for 559 yards in
Well, you're
2021.
telling me about you're giving the scouting report on a player that previously played for a team with mascot called the Hard Rockers.
Uh,
Okay,
if what I'm looking at, if what I'm looking at
just want to make sure.
suits me right, if I'm looking at suits me right, yes, they are. But in 2022, he rushed for 526 yards, 8 touchdowns. 2022 seems like kind of his best year. About 3,200 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 7 picks, around that 63% completion percentage. So who knows how he's going to translate at that next level. He's probably one of the more proven players on this offense. Really, when I was scanning through, trying to find some names to tell you guys, there's really just not much. I found an Elijah Downing. He's a receiver, a sophomore, 6'5", 200 pounds listed. So that's an interesting. He was, you know, middle of the pack, 3-star, only rated on 24/7 and Rivals. I guess he was a 2-star on Rivals. So not much there. Committed to Louisville in 2023. Is now with the Racers. There's a Josh Crabtree who started his career with NC State, is now with Murray State. Didn't really do anything productive there at all. They have a true freshman running back, Jordan Washington, who couldn't really find much on at all. Defense, there's a little bit more. One thing that caught my attention was that defensive back room. They bring back Kayvon Reed, I believe is his name, 31 tackles and an interception last year. He's going to be a senior. Canyon Walker, I believe. He had 50 tackles last year for the Racers, started his career with Tulane. And Amari Wainsley as well. 33 tackles for Florida Atlantic last year. So probably one of the more proven transfers, I'd imagine, from what I've been able to find. But 33 tackles for the FAU Owls last year, playing at safety there. A little bit of experience on the defensive line. I mean, I found a Darian Goodrub who played at Western Kentucky last year, has a little bit of experience. A Denard Flowers, defensive end. He was at Arkansas State last year. But really, after that, not much proven playing experience. Sprinkle in some freshmen at multiple positions as well. Don't know much about that offensive line. So, like I said, it is when Coach Drinkwitz said it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge scouting and preparing. I think I see where he's coming from. There is very limited amount of information, and they brought in these transfers, yes, but not many of them are proven, if not proven at all. So it's. I think you made a good point before, or maybe at the beginning, Joey, that I don't think Murray State knows what they're going to roll out with their on week 1 here in 2 days. So yeah, I guess a guy, if I had to pinpoint to areas to maybe keep an eye on, it would probably be that quarterback Johansson. He's putted some work the last couple years at the lower level. So what he can do with his receivers will be interesting, whatever their offensive line looks like. And then those defensive backs as well look like they're on the more proven side when it comes to players and their defense. So it was a struggle. It was a struggle, but that's about all I have.
I do think we have to be at least a little bit fair, and you can't really dismiss all of these guys for whatever star ranking they have, whatever
For
schools
sure.
they're coming from. If 2 years ago you showed somebody who wasn't a Missouri fan the name Cody Schrader and that he's coming from Truman State, to be like, why is this guy, being asked to be the number 2 running back in the SEC offense? However, as I put in my story today, or the story that was going to come out if Cody Schrader made the San Francisco 49ers roster, I had to go with other ones since he was waived. But the story I had pre-written if he was going to make it was Cody Schrader has been the exception to the norm many times. And so that's not to say they're all these guys playing for Murray State, of course, are really talented football players, better than me and Michael could ever play.
Oh
But
God. Oh
but
God.
this is not a team that, despite what Eli Drinkwitz might put out into the public discussion, this is not a team Mizzou should be losing any sleep over. This should be a team Mizzou should mop the floor with. And I'm not saying that in any sort of bias or any thoughts on this Mizzou team. This goes without saying. A SEC team going up against a team in the Missouri Valley Conference, a team that nonetheless finished 2-9 last year. I know they had a lot of transfers coming in, really cleaned house. It's a different team. Team finished 2-9 last year. They're not attracting the best of a bunch to Murray State. So, the worst case scenario for Mizzou in this game would, if Murray State upsets and defeats Mizzou. I mean, to Drinkwitz's point, none of their games for the rest of the season would matter. It would be hard to see Mizzou get much success in rankings and playoffs or whatever if they have that stain of losing to Murray State on their season. They'd be fighting an uphill battle for the rest of the season. But I don't foresee that happening. And I was thinking when you were explaining all of this, Michael, what does a real win for Mizzou look like in this game? Now, obviously, a win is putting more points up, but what would be something where it's not like, okay, we took care of business? What would be more, this was a really good start to our season. We feel good about our team. We learned stuff about our team that we didn't know going into this game. Is there anything you think that would be a really good sign for Missouri coming out of this game? Anything that they could truly take away from this game to have some more optimism going ahead?
I mean, yeah, I think we're going to hit on this. We were going to hit on this a little bit down the road, but I think a nice showing from the defense wouldn't hurt at all. New defensive coordinator. I think that would make some fans happy to see maybe a shutout or very limited amount of scoring, or maybe it's scoring late in the game from Murray State, whatever that looks like. But I think a good defensive showing would probably make some people happy, and not even playing related or score related or even winning related. If you gotta stay healthy and avoid
Yeah.
injuries. Any major injuries from any player, whether it's a starter or a depth piece. I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to put that into the world. But
That's a good idea. Yeah.
yeah, but any sort of injury from any player at all, whether it's a third string or a starter, I think that would be viewed as a partial loss. So stay healthy, and by all means, they need to come out with that intensity. And I'm not saying that they're not going to try or not going to hit as hard or not going to run as fast or make certain cuts, but you just have to be a little bit, wary of
Mm-hmm.
not getting hurt. I think that would be viewed as a loss if there are some injuries, especially if it's a garbage time victory against Murray State.
Yeah. I think there's much more ways that Mizzou could win but still lose this game compared to winning this game and having a bunch of positive takeaways. Just because it's like
Yeah.
they're by the third quarter of this game, they should Drew Pine should be in at quarterback. Jamal Roberts and Forrest Jones should be getting a look at running backs. Joshua Manning, Daniel Blood should be the first two wide receivers in. They should have a comfortable distance in this game
For sure.
to be able to do that. And at that point, the goal is just, again, win the game, stay healthy. Eli Drinkwitz would be on us right now. This is definitely not a 1-0 mindset, but we don't have him as a coach, and we can be a little bit more realistic. So, I mean, I think it's great the way he's prepared them. As I believe it was Khalil Jacobs, the linebacker from South Alabama, told us this week of that Drinkwitz point, or no, it was Dalen Carnell pointed out to us that Drinkwitz mentioned to the team the teams that got upset in college football on that first day in week 0, the teams that had a lead and going into the fourth quarter that got too comfortable. I think that's a good mindset to have. Even when you're going up against a lesser team, all it takes is the ball bouncing weird ways, goofy stuff happening a few times, and all of a sudden you're losing to 10. You're losing by 10. That being said, Mizzou is 46.5-point favorites over Murray State. The upsets you look at in college football in week 0 was Georgia Tech and Florida State. Georgia Tech, the difference between those two teams is not nearly as much as it is between the SEC school and Murray State. So, yeah, again, goal is to don't have anything ridiculous happen to where you lose this game, and stay healthy is the main thing. And get a look at a few different guys, get a look at a few different concepts. I asked Drinkwitz this past week, if the playbook's going to be guarded at all. He says no, and I believe him partially. I'm not going to accuse him of being a liar or anything. I agree more so with the second part of his answer where he said, the only reason we wouldn't be running stuff is not because we're trying to guard our playbook, trying to not put stuff on film. It's because we don't feel like our guys have gotten enough reps with it. I believe him there. I also do, like, they're not going to, if they have stuff that they have planned for down the line, they're not going to throw it out unless they really need to against Murray State. I mean, even last year, you look at it, the difference in play calling between games against South Dakota State and then Middle Tennessee State compared to Kansas State, especially, I mean, really, the door was unlocked to Kirby Moore's offense on the Luther Burden touchdown, where he has that really cool route concept with Mookie Cooper, where they switch. I believe Luther was actually initially lined up on the outside, and then they do a really cool thing at the point of attack with corners. It was second and short, and they switch, and then obviously Luther loses his guy, and he's wide open for a touchdown. That was the real first look at the Kirby Moore offense. Kansas State week 3. So they're not going to unveil anything too complicated against Murray State just because they don't have to, really. And it's pointless to, wanted to drink Wood's point to just ask guys to do things they're unfamiliar with, but also to the point he wasn't as upfront about of, not putting stuff on tape. So as far as answering my initial question of what a win would look like, I agree with you, Michael. A one where the defense knows what they're doing, but just in general, Eli said the main thing that the first few weeks of the season are for is for eliminating bad football. He talked about in fall camp, there was alignment errors on defense. There was penalty errors all around. If they can clean those up, that's the one thing where it's not dependent of the opponent they're facing that you want to see off the film. If they can have a really clean game, then that's a really positive takeaway they can get from this. Align well on defense, have a good understanding of defense. That's positive takeaway from this game. Other than that, I think it's silly to really look at like, oh, well, they should be blown out. Murray State, like I said, they're 46.5-point favorites. If they only win by 20, then that's a disappointment. They should be blown out of water. I think that's silly to look into too much. So I'm not going to put a point value on it, but eliminating that bad football, playing a really clean game would be a positive takeaway, and then anything else is just gravy on top. On to some storylines to watch in this game. Again, like we were just talking, we've exhausted a lot of the talking points for this season in fall camp preparation. So it's not like we can talk exactly about specific matchups or anything, not like we can talk about how either of these teams' seasons have been going, but there is a few things that we might have an answer to per se that we got in fall camp or on the depth chart, but we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. So we came up with 3 storylines that we're going to be watching in this game on Thursday. And the first one is Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel, what the split looks like between them. Drinkwitz said this past week, revealed, and this was kind of the way things were trending just throughout fall camp. Nate Noel is going to be the first guy out there, and then Marcus Carroll is going to be worked in there afterwards, worked into the rotation. So still a little bit unclear. And obviously what they do in this first game against Murray State isn't going to be the exact indicator of what they're going to do in future weeks. But interested to see exactly what that split looks like, how much each of them are doing pass protection, how much each of them are doing run blocking. If Jamal Roberts, if he's a clear C guy or if he's kind of a more B/C guy, what that looks like. And also, I mean, just with every one of these transfers, how do they play? Because we can do all this research on them, see how much experience they got at all their other schools, but at the end of the day, haven't seen them actually on the field in person. So definitely interested to see how Carroll and Noel look. Michael, any thoughts there? And then what's our second storyline we're looking at?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Carroll handles less carries. I mean, he said it's going to be, he said it a couple days ago, like it's going to be nice to have someone who can take some of those carries away. So he's not doing it all. I think, if I'm correct, I believe he was fifth in the country last year, in total carries, and obviously pushing, 13, 14, 1,500 rushing yards. So, it's probably going to be. I know he's not thinking about his stats. He's a team guy, but that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
different. Like it's not going to be another insane rushing season for him. And then pass protection and run blocking are an interesting thing. I think Roberts stood out in those categories and during fall camp. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where he kind of slots in there. But just think about it from a fan perspective, right? If you're, last year you're a freshman, just like us, coming in to the University of Missouri as a football, as a fan or slash journalist, or if you're just a student and you're a fan, you saw Cody Schrader he got 90% of the carries or whatever that number looks like. He was dominant. He ran everywhere. He was powerful. He was quick. He got done the receiving game. And he was the guy. And now we have two, maybe three.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a complete complete adjustment, even from the Missouri fan viewing perspective. So I think that'll be a kind of an interesting way to look at that. As far as our second storyline goes, I alluded to it a little earlier, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what a Corey Batoon defense looks like. He obviously had some success at South Alabama, and we brought a guy in Khalil Jacobs with him, which is going to be interesting to see. I think just from a personnel standpoint, like you said, so many. I don't want to say question marks because I think we know what some of these transfers are capable of. We've seen it. Their previous stops and a little bit in the fall. But I think all that really gets thrown out the window when you're on the field for the first time in a different uniform. So it'll be interesting to see new guys. I'm excited to see how this defensive line operates. It's almost completely renovated, minus Christian Williams and Johnny Walker. I think guys like Zion Young and Eddie Kelly, it's going to be interesting to see how they play off each other. So, and then scheme wise too, it's going to be interesting to see what Batoon brings to the table. So I think I don't want to say they're question marks because I'd hope the players kind of have the idea of what they're doing now, but from our perspective, we're going to learn a lot about the defense.
Yeah, exactly. Just seeing those little wrinkles from everything we heard, it really seems like it's. I hesitate to call the scheme basic because I don't know anything about the scheme. I just know it's 4-2-5. I know they're going to employ a joker. I know they're going to have a star just like they had in Blake Baker's 4-2-5. It really doesn't seem like there's going to be anything too revolutionary in the scheme, at least that they're trying to teach the players right now. And I do think, again, I've hesitated for a long time. Like, again, I'm not questioning the hiring because I wasn't the one who interviewed Corey Batoon. I wasn't the one who looked at all of his previous stops. But it does feel like this was it was a pretty safe hire for Drinkwitz to go with Batoon, somebody who it's not like he's a up and coming young guy who has worked in successful schemes, got lucky a few times there, and has all this new stuff that he's done. Bill and Batoon is coming from decades of experience, has been a defense coordinator multiple times before. and runs the same scheme as Blake Baker. So it's a safe hire by Drinkwitz. And so we'll see just how different it is. Obviously, like I said, there's going to be some new wrinkles to it. We'll see how aggressive he is. Again, we're going to have to take everything with a grain of salt because their play calling, their personnel usage is going to be a little bit different in this game. I'll be shocked if it isn't. So definitely looking forward to watching that defense, seeing how everybody performs in it. Finally, on to our last storyline that we're watching into this game is really just which freshmen see the field at all. Now, obviously, some of it is just going to have to be deciphering between, okay, what guy are they just going to try to get a look at? Like, if Hafer and Jude James are in there, guys that aren't listed on the depth chart, it's like, okay, these guys are it's probably going to be some guys that are redshirting this year that they just want to get a good look at now in game action. But the other part of it, some of them, it's going to be like, okay, if Williams Winery is coming in pretty early to the game and he's the second defensive end behind either Johnny Walker or Eddie Kelly or Zion Young, like that would be something new, especially because on the unofficial depth chart issued by the team, and still a mystery why it's a unofficial depth chart when it's issued by the team, but that's too technical. It's straight from the team. Williams Winery is listed as fourth defensive end on the right side. So which was really interesting. Who did you say was under, Michael? Do you have it pulled up?
It was Jaylen Brown, another true freshman.
Okay. So really surprised me. I will say, so I'm looking at it now. So at the right defensive end, it's Zion Young or Eddie Kelly, both transfers, and then it's Jaylen Brown or Williams Winery. And it's hard to tell with his step chart how much, like, at some positions that or is doing a lot of work because it's Nate Noel or Marcus Carroll. But at others, it's like it's just going to depend on personnel. Like Chuck Hicks at Mike linebacker or Corey Flagg, that's going to depend on the situation. Same with Tristan Newsome or Khalil Jacobs at weak side linebacker, depending on the situation. Same thing, Joseph Charleston or Trevez Johnson, depending on the situation. The one thing that I would say is a true or that they'll probably really split time between the two guys is Nick DeLoach and Toriano Pride. DeLoach was a really fast riser of fall camp. We'll see exactly what that looks like. But as far as Winery, again, interesting to see that. It's right. It's so hard to read into how much is Jaylen Brown being over him, even though it's what does that mean? But I did find that interesting. And then, like I said in my depth chart piece, there's not all freshmen are listed on here, so it is interesting to look at the ones that are. They have Cam Keys as boundary corner. I'm assuming this is on the right side, whatever side Jared Norwood is going to be lining up on. They have Cam Keys or Jamarion Wayne, the wide receiver cover, and Jamarion Wayne is dealing with an injury at this point, might not suit up for Saturday or Thursday's game. So Cam Keys could be the number 3 cornerback there on that side. They also have, let's see, some of these other guys. They have James Madison and Courtney Crutchfield, both as wide receivers here for the X receiver under Theo Weiss. James Madison is the 4th receiver behind Logan Muckey. For Z, they got Courtney Crutchfield as wide receiver number 3 under Mookie and Joshua Manning. And then finally at Y, this isn't a freshman. There's no freshman there. It's just Daniel Blood at number 3. Trying to just scan on the depth chart now for any other true freshmen.
Yeah, so Q Lacey is going to be sitting at RB5 behind Noel or Carroll, then Roberts and Jones. You mentioned Jaylen Brown and Williams Winery. I believe you hit on everyone. Greco's behind Charleston and Johnson at that free safety spot. Nicholas Rodriguez. Rodriguez behind Little John. And then no real surprises, obviously, besides Brown and Winery. But one I just found interesting was Jaron Sensabaugh behind Pride or Deloach, and then redshirt freshman Shamar McNeil. Just haven't seen much from Sensabaugh at all. this fall camp and in the spring. So that was kind of a, I don't want to say a surprise, but just an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see if he really touches the field. But it rounds out at 10 true freshmen listed on the roster. Just off the top of my head, I think, you kind of think of Whit Hafer and Jude James as two guys who we heard a lot about in fall
Right.
camp, but aren't listed on here. I think those were probably some, supplemental injury solutions while the trio of tight ends was banged up. But yeah, there's 10 true freshmen listed. It's interesting. No one on the offensive line. I know, Ryan Joss, Taylor Chandler, Caleb Pyfrom, three true freshmen on that offensive line, not listed anywhere. We heard Chandler's name for a split second there when they were talking second, third string center, but so yeah, 10 true freshmen. He made a great point about Keys and Wayne being out. I think it'd be exciting to see him get on the field. So yeah, 10 true freshmen. We'll see him sprinkled hopefully throughout the game.
What's interesting when you were talking about Jaron Sinsball, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a true freshman, but on the Mizzou depth chart that they gave us, it says that Jaron Sinsball is a junior.
He is listed as a junior.
So Mizzou football has a few areas, they have that depth chart, and then also on the Mizzou website, if you look up Daniel Blood, it says that his freshman year was 2003. So,
okay. Thank you for fact checking me.
So, yeah, I was like, I know this guy's a freshman, but
heart sank a little bit.
Make sure he's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, this would be
slightly.
Yeah, because when I was looking up Jaron Sinsball too, your Meet the Freshman was first thing that popped up. It's like, man, this would be terrible if Michael did a Meet the Freshman on a junior cornerback.
Oh my!
But I mean, the one thing I saw from Sinsball in fall camp, like we've talked about so many times over the past few weeks, we don't get to see a lot of the team drills, but there was just one drill that I was watching one day that was one-on-ones between corners and wide receivers. Not that they were running routes, but more so just at the release. And then they also had one just like a athletic agility drill and Sinsball really stuck out to me with just how quickly he moved from side to side. So there's that. But yeah, interesting to see him there in the same position as Cam Keys. Not as much because he had Pride or Deloach, and then he's got Shamar McNeil is definitively ahead of him. But yeah, like we said, you got to take all of this with a grain of salt with these freshmen. A lot of these guys are going to redshirt. Some of them, though, it could be a case of these are just the backups, and Mizzou is putting in backups. So can't take too much away from that, but undoubtedly will be a fun time to see what those guys look like, how they're being used, and yeah, excited for that. That's one thing we can look forward to when we want to see all these new faces.
I know there are those super fans out there who, track their recruiting classes. Obviously, Joey and I do. Mm-hmm. So I know there are going to be those fans out there who are excited to see guys like Jaron Sinsball, maybe on the lower side on the depth chart. Maybe if a Brian Huff or a Nick Rodriguez gets in there. I know there are going to be people out there who are excited to see them. I think that's why the early season is exciting, because you might be able to see some people you won't see for quite a bit of time. So I think that's an exciting part of the early season for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I've always thought what I've really loved about being a fan, especially of a team like the Packers. I bring them up so many times on the show, but with the Packers, how they operate different from other NFL teams. They harp so much on draft and develop. So their guys, they really stick in their program for a long time. And it might take, even for their first round draft picks, might take 2 years before they are consistently contributing. And so to watch those guys, how they start out in the preseason, it makes preseason really interesting, how they start out in the rookie year in the preseason and that little bit of time, and then you don't see them for another year, and just to track their growth over that time is really exciting. So really excited to be able to do that, to start tracking those guys. And then, we're seeing the results of it already with Missouri's 2023 class. We're expecting Joshua Manning, Daniel Blood, probably a few that I'm forgetting, Nicholas Deloach, all guys that are going to be really consistent players this year. So should be exciting to see those guys out there. And get the first look at their growth. Finally, for us here today, before we head to Murray State, the Murray State game, a player we are looking forward to watching in this game. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to play the whole game, and they're not going to be in their full involvement. But one guy I'm looking forward to watching this week is Marquise Johnson, the sophomore wide receiver. We heard from Drinkwitz on him not this past Sunday, but the week before that in his fall camp wrap-up press conference. He talked about Marquise Johnson, talked a lot about his maturity. And I thought it was a real honest breakdown from Drinkwitz on how Johnson, the steps Johnson has made in that department, his maturity off the field and on the field, how consistent he is with his energy and his performance on the field. And thought it was a really honest answer. And, he compared it to the jump that they're hoping to see out of Marquise to the one that they saw from Luther's maturity from year 1 to year 2. Just, the start of fall camp, Drinkwitz was talking about the great jump in maturity Luther made emotionally, going from his freshman year, getting, being all cryptic on social media if he didn't get a certain amount of targets in the game compared to 2023, where he kind of took a back seat. I mean, he obviously had really good numbers, but for a few games near the end of the season there, it was the Cody Schrader show, and he was Cody's number one fan. Just that jump. He credited Theo Weiss with a lot of mentoring Luther along the way. And I'm sure Luther now can play a similar role for Marquise to show him along the way, because Marquise next year is going to be probably, I think we just discovered last week that Mekhi Miller still has another year of eligibility, I believe.
Yes, he does.
I was either so Mekhi Miller, if he sticks around, will be the most experienced guy, but Marquise Johnson is going to be more of a starter and is going to be in the room with a lot of young guys. He's going to have Manning and Blood in the same class, but he's going to have more experience than them, most likely, depending on how all of them play this season. He's going to have a few freshmen coming in this year, and then also next year, and Johnson's going to have to be a real leader in that room. So obviously we'll be able to track that throughout the season, but interested to see in this game alone how he's used, because last year was it was hit and miss, not only on how much he produced, but also just how much he saw the field. And it felt like every time he saw the field for a long amount of time, he was making big time plays. So interested in see how they get him into any sort of role. Well, what role he plays this year, I think he can really stretch this field for the Missouri offense just as a deep threat. Michael, who are you watching in this game?
I'm gonna switch my answer from what I told you previously, Joey, because we were talking about him, and I'm really excited to see what Nick Deloach does. I obviously I told you I was my initial answer was Toriana Pride, and I think he's slightly more proven than Deloach. And don't get me wrong, I love Toriana Pride, but just from my perspective, I really feel like I haven't got to see much of Deloach yet. Just my minimal viewing and things like that. So I'm excited to see what he does. I think he's going to. It was kind of a pleasant surprise to hear that he was having such a good fall. So I'd say Deloach, but I guess I'll touch on Pride a little bit as well. With Pride, I think the big thing is just going to be consistency. I think that was preached a little bit during fall camp. So just him being consistent is going to be a big thing for him. But I think obviously he was a high rated recruit, local that went to Clemson, but he's here now, which is wonderful. But so he has a talent; it's there for sure. Athleticism certainly there, so it's going to be exciting to see. Same thing with Deloach; he's a little bigger, a little more physical. It's going to be exciting to see how the two of them kind of go hand in hand.
Right, exactly. And I feel like that spot might still be a case of a little bit of what we talked about last week, of a competition that carries a little bit into the season, and it might not exactly be a full-on competition, but really of just whatever skill set sets this defense best up. So we'll see. I mean, kind of the same thing with Carroll, how much those guys are rotated in and out. And again, just like everybody on defense, could just be dependent on situation, scheme, alignment, and everything. So excited to see that. And as the main thing we got to look forward to this week, obviously, want to expect a close game, not expecting the full unleashing of this Mizzou team, but it's going to give us our first look, obviously. Once we get into SEC season, we got Vanderbilt to kick it off on September 21st, bye week, and then a really big game against Texas A&M that will really influence how the rest of the season goes for Missouri. So the journey starts this Thursday. The journey, the story that we will be telling this year will begin, and we'll see how long it goes. That's all we got for you today here on the All Things Mizzou podcast. We appreciate you tuning in to all of these episodes during this preseason on Mizzou SI. Make sure you check out the YouTube channel. We will have content from the game as soon as it's done. So be sure to check out that and everything we got going on at the website as well. So thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you later.